Welcome to Friday with Friends. Friday with Friends is our opportunity to talk about the real estate market, answer any questions you may have, so that if you have any real estate needs, we'd love the opportunity to be your realtor of choice.
So next on our list of terms you need to know is, well, it's actually double. You guys get 2 for 1 today, and that is a pre-possession and post-possession. Now, this isn't a new term. It's just become more and more popular over the last few years as the seller's market have allowed sellers who are in the driver's seat to really ask for anything they want. And because of that, they're given this opportunity for buyers to kind of have to put their best foot forward.
So let's talk about what a typical possession looks like, right? If you've ever bought or sold a house, this is probably what it looked like. It looks like the seller owns the home, the seller lives in the home. The day the home closes, after that closing date, the buyer then lives in the home and owns the home and has all the utilities and insurance covered in their name. However, let's start by talking about what a pre-possession might look like. A pre-possession is where a buyer moves into the home prior to the closing date. So the seller moves out, buyer moves in, and then buyer assumes the utilities, gets their own insurance coverage, and most often it's treated like a rental and where there's a security deposit.
Yep. And then on the same side of that, the post-possession is that the seller remains in the home after closing. So keeping possession post-closing. And in that world, same idea. They are going to be having the utilities still in their name since they are still living there. Insurance is still in their name. And many times as well, there's a security deposit and sometimes a rental amount of some amount. Now the rent and the security deposit is negotiable. So that's something that the buyer can really put their best foot forward with. And this is why the pre and post possession has become so popular over the last few years, is because they can attract and put their best foot forward to the seller. And that's why it's so important that your realtor as a buyer's agent is talking to the listing agent to say, what is important to your seller? How can we win with you guys? And if they say, well, actually, they'd love to close on this day with a rent back for a week, you wouldn't know, or post possession for a week, you wouldn't know that unless you asked.
Yes. Now, all of these details that we talked about are not within the purchase contract. Right. It is a separate post-possession or pre-possession agreement that we are working with an attorney to draw it up so that there is full coverage, everyone's aware, and everyone's feeling comfortable with these decisions. But so let's talk about some situations where a pre or a post-possession may be valuable to a buyer or a seller. So give me one example.
Yeah. So one that we see all the time is a client of ours is buying and selling simultaneously. So they have bought a house. Now they list their house, and ideally they would close on the same day so they can use the funds from their sale for their purchase. But have you ever moved before? Have you ever moved in a day? It's not ideal. So what we allow them to do is close on the same day, and then maybe we get them a rent back or, a pre-possession, either way, I guess, a rent back in their home to move out slowly and move into the home over a week's time. So they close on the same day and then do a 1 week post-possession.
So they could do a pre-possession to get into the other house first to start moving things, or they can do a post-possession and they can request that from the buyer to say, we'd like to stay for an additional week. There's also situations where sellers say, hey, I have a new build and I want to get the funds for my house now, or really I just want one less thing on my mind. I want to know that my house is sold, but I would like to stay in my house. What's the longest post-possession you've had? 6 months?
Yeah, a few months. Yeah.
There's been literally sellers, you can ask for anything right now in certain situations. And there was this post-possession where the buyer said, that's fine. If it means I can get the house, I'm happy to be able to keep you in that home for the next 6 months. And then the seller is so excited because they feel confident. And again, they keep everything in their name. So really the seller is paying the mortgage for that new owner, that new buyer.
Yeah. And a post-possession or a pre-possession can be any length of time. It can be 24 hours. It can be, oftentimes we see maybe a week or two up to months. So it really just depends on what the buyer and seller are both looking for and, how we can make that work for everybody. Now, as Mandy mentioned, sometimes there is a rental amount for, the amount of time that you stay in the house, but that is negotiable. A typical amount that most attorneys would recommend is what we call PITI. And that is your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance for the month. So that would be if it's a post-possession, the buyer now owns the home. So it would be their PITI divided by, let's say 30 days in the month. And that's how much the daily rate would be. But in this market, the buyer is oftentimes saying, seller, you can maybe stay for free or at a discounted rate.
So these are all things that if you don't have an agent that's asking to know how can we win with the seller, you wouldn't even know that our team is writing it up to be able to say, hey, we're going to make it perfect It's like, wait, they'd let us stay in there for free for another week, as opposed to just, it's one more thing they have to worry about. So pre-possession and post-possession are terms that are so important for you to know, so that if you do have a situation come up where that is what a seller wants, or maybe you are the seller saying, I didn't know I could do that. That would make my life so much easier. That would reduce so much stress. You have the capacity, you have the power to ask. And again, you never know what that offer is going to come in, but at least you know that you have that option out there. So that's what we have for today on pre-possession, post-possession. Thanks for tuning in to
Friday with Friends.
Again, Friday with Friends is our opportunity to talk about the real estate market. If you have any questions or any comments, any topics you'd like for us to discuss, any other terms that you think we need to share with the community, we would love to hear from you. As always, if you have any real estate needs, we'd love the opportunity to be your realtor of choice. You can find us anywhere on social media. Visit friendonyourside.com, or as always, give us a call.